Thank you, Dr. Shabbat.
We are live.
And I got it. Can you see the same thing? I can. Welcome, everyone. Oh, welcome again to our College Council meeting. Thank you to everyone who's joining us via YouTube. Want to just publicly thank Ira and Janelli and Sean for making it possible for us to be able to have this meeting in person. We're still learning this technology. And I know when I first arrived at City College and I was doing a lot of videos and things of that nature, I received an email from someone who said that being that we are a college, we have to have this big production team that helps to put these things on. But the fact of the matter is that we've got two people in Sean and Eric, and certainly we appreciate Majda, and so we're looking to get additional support. I think I worked with Robbie to ask that he hire a Nance. I was talking to Sean and Eric, and we're getting more and more requests for things of this nature, hybrid, and so we're looking to put additional resources. We've got an order totaling over $100,000 that we're waiting for Robbie to get approval to get in some additional technology. So we definitely are working on it, but it is so good to be in person. I am going to start with a roll call. And Mona, who is the past president of academics, I don't know if this conflicts with her class schedule.
Unfortunately,
No, she's teaching at a couple of our high schools.
yes, yes, that's it, that's part of the school.
Tilly, our vice president of instruction.
Present,
Robbie, chair of institutional technology council. Caesar, information officer. Present. Jocelyn, supervisory representative. Suna, president of Chairs Academy.
present,
And I gotta remember to break my glasses. I've been looking at the computer so often. Like, every time I start reading a physical document, I remember that I can't adjust the font. Masa, administrative rep.
Yes, present.
Oops, thank you. Susan, Dean of Institutional, I was just making sure you're paying attention. Didn't skip Susan, it's very important.
For sure.
Dean of Institutional Effectiveness.
present,
Diego, the reason why we are here, and our president of the Association of Government.
Present.
John, vice president of administrative services.
Present.
Marciano, vice president of students.
here,
Sean, president classified senate.
Present.
And Maria Jose, president of the academic senate.
presente,
Thank you all again for being here. This represents College Council, and the one advantage to doing it via Zoom is we actually get more participation on Zoom or YouTube than we tend to do in person. So I want to welcome everyone who is watching via the YouTube feed. These fine leaders are the representatives from the constituency group on campus. If you desire to have an agenda item on College Council, you can reach out to one of the leaders of the constituency groups or very simply email Janelli in the president's office. College Council is the highest level of governance, shared governance, participatory governance at our college, and we discuss college business, student success, and a host of other things. With that said, the second item on the agenda it says the approval of the agenda, but I actually think that should say approval of the minutes. And so we make a modification there. The second item is actually approval of the minutes. Welcome, Jocelyn, good to see you. If we can have a motion for the approval of the meeting notes, which are also in your packets.
Maria Jose Fernandez Perez, I move to.
Thank you, Maria Jose. We got a first. Is there a second?
I say Sean Ryan, second.
Thank you, Sean. Any further discussion about item 2, which should actually read approval of the meeting agenda minutes, which are in your packet from the August 30th, were also included in the email. Any further discussion, changes? All in favor, if you would indicate those in favor by raising your hand. Looks like motion carries unanimously. Thank you all very much. Next, we are going to have an update on the college's equity plan from Marciano.
So hello, everyone. Just wanted to give a really quick update on our equity plan. Anna Rogers, unfortunately, couldn't be here because she's teaching a class during this time. So I just wanted to share that the timeline really is that a student journey metrics group performed on September 2nd. So we had a meeting and started looking over the metrics. Then the metric work group sessions are between August 22nd and September 15th. We're meeting to do that. So we have several groups that are meeting to identify their metrics and to come up with their plans. The student journey committee reviewed it on the 6th. Will review it this coming Friday on the 16th. So all of us are bringing back the different DI groups that we have identified to that. Then we'll be going to the academic senate for a first read on October 10th. Then a second read on October 24th. College Council first read on October 11th. College Council second read on October 25th, with hopes of doing a board presentation. Approval is not required for the November 10th board meeting. So that's our timeline for submission for the new equity.
And if Marciano, if you wouldn't mind maybe emailing that so we have that in writing. Any questions for Marciano about the college's equity plan? I didn't hear students on that, and typically the student ASU president has to sign off. Is there sign off for a student?
There will be a sign up for students.
Okay, so you'll work with Diego and Adon to get on that agenda. Did I hear classifieds?
You do not.
So let's make sure that we go around to all the constituency groups to include SPA. And that's just to have a further detailed discussion about it. I don't want to hold it up, but if you could work with the classified senate and Jocelyn and Diego to make sure that there are times on there as well, and just update us accordingly when we get those times locked in. I want to thank everyone who is helping with the development of the equity plan. We want to recognize that Anna is providing leadership as well, so we appreciate that very much. Any further discussion, questions about the equity plan? This is so important, not only in terms of identifying those populations that are disproportionately impacted, but also the equity plan has somewhere between a $1.6 or so million budget. So staffing and programs are supported with the equity plan. In fact, we are taking a group to Ghana, hopefully, this Thursday, and that is being funded by the equity plan as well. And so look forward, Marciano, to seeing the final plan coming to College Council based on the dates that you outlined. Questions from Marciano? Hearing none, I'm going to turn item number 4 over to John.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. This is more of an overview or an update from Administrative Services. Sorry about the title. We did do an overview of the budget process at the August 2nd meeting. Just a couple of quick updates, starting with staffing and business services. Thanks everyone for reaching out to me, and thanks for those who have been working with me and being patient in it's not even a restructuring, but our restaffing of business services, as we have lost quite a few key positions, but we're shuffling who's remaining to provide the services and the resources that we need to complete requests, travel authorization, expense forms, you name it. We do understand that there's a slight delay. However, the good news is that relief is on the way. We are in the process of hiring 3 accountants, one being a senior accountant, and hopefully we can have those positions in place by the end of the semester. Updates to come as we start the recruiting process for those positions, and I'd like to thank my colleagues and helping me work with getting those positions filled, and our team in business services for filling in. It's pretty much all hands on deck for the hands that we do have remaining. business services. Wanted to highlight real quick the HERF request form. I did create a revised request form, which you may have in your packet. Two salient items that we completed, actually 3. These are going to be 7A, B, and C, and there will be a D after the 3rd reversion. But I'll talk about items A through C and the difference between the bid and the quote requirements. So this is a district policy that any purchase for goods or services over $10,000 requires 3 quotes. A quote is as simple as an email, or it can be a formal quote from an organization as an attachment saying, this is what the estimate would be, and it's just that a quote. However, we would need 3 of those. Any purchase for goods or services exceeding $99,100 requires competitive bids. And what that means is we'd have to create an RFP, send it out to bid, have potential vendors respond with their proposal with a competitive bid, have them present, we score them, we select a vendor and get them set up as a vendor. That process takes several months as opposed to the quote threshold, which could take a day because it could be something as simple as an email. Again, these are district administrative policies that we must comply with. So some of our requests have been kicked back because they don't have quotes or it has to go out to a competitive bid. And we'll work with you on that. We try to catch it on the front end as the requests are coming through. The HERF request, or if it's a GFU request, we try to catch it on the front end so that it doesn't go to district. A couple have made it through. All right, item number 2, any 7B, sorry, is any purchase that's over $25,000 will be discussed with amongst the VPs and approval required from respective VP of the requestor. 7C is very important regarding items being received prior to year end on June 30th of every fiscal year. As you know, that's our fiscal year end date. If an item is not received by then, POs will be closed. That's blanket POs as well. If an item has been received, however, it has not been invoiced, we need to know about that. We generally do create reports and we'll work with requestors that those items will need to be accrued so that we put a placeholder in this fiscal year. So when the invoice comes next fiscal year, it'll post in the respective fiscal year. So that's what they accrue. As we get a placeholder for those items. Please note, we are working with also supply chain challenges, as we all know we have been for COVID, especially since the war, actually, in the last several months or so. We've had a bottleneck with a lot of items. I was explaining this yesterday in a meeting that even paper, so the reprographics and mailroom, we're having challenges getting certain type of paper in stock. The district, we're printing a lot for the district right now, so we're using some of the paper that we do have in stock, and we'll be working with the district to help us replenish some of that paper. But when it comes to furniture, we've had furniture, patio furniture, 13 months on order. We ordered that last August of 2021. And so the delivery date has been extended several times in the last 13 months. It was supposed to be 90 days. Then it was going to be in spring and summer and fall. And now it's projected to arrive in December. So we're looking at about 18 months for the A patio furniture. The same thing goes with technology and certain supplies. So please be careful and considerate of the bottleneck for the supply chain challenges that we do have. Item 7D that I'll be adding to the HERF form is the SAM.gov registration for any vendors for which we will be paying using federal funds. Now, this is not just HERF funds, but any federal funds. This communication went out to all vendors this past summer, and an update to the district communities went out shortly thereafter at the beginning of fall, or end of summer, beginning of fall. Nothing we need to do at the campus levels, although it doesn't hurt sometimes if we want to reach out to a vendor and just kind of rattle their cage a little bit, say, hey, we need to get you registered if you want this order, if you want our business. And from what I'm hearing, it's taking about 2 weeks, give or take. So in some cases, it take a little longer and others it may take a little less. But I want to have a checkbox on here just to note that it would behoove us if we know that they're registered prior to placing an order for those goods or services with after we receive this approval. So that's the update that I'll be adding to this is for 7D. Any questions that I can answer regarding staffing, procurement, or
Yes,
Question.
you missed 4B.
for B? Oh, yes, thank you. Workshops on travel, PeopleSoft, and Rex. We will be implementing workshops or labs, if you will. This is something that Business Services did prior to my arrival. Recalling that I did come in cold during COVID, but we have a lot of new people here, me being one of them. We have a lot of promotions. We need refreshers for those who probably have not filled out a TA in a while, or repayment form or requisition. We will be reinstituting those labs, dates and timelines to follow. The first one will be for travel recs and TAs, because we're getting into conference season. We're starting to see an increase in those TAs and requests. And a lot of folks are just needing refreshers, and a lot of new folks, they're kind of lost. Even me, I filled out my own. I just threw my hands up in the air. So I'm the first one that's going to be in that workshop. But we're thinking the second or third week in October. Dates to follow, just need to follow up with some confirmations from a couple of our constituencies of which days will work best for the campus. These labs will be recorded. So those who are unable to attend them, so not only will they be live, we'll be recording those sessions for those who are not able to attend, so that they can reference it at a future date or at any time for that matter. Then we'll follow up with purchase. We'll have another workshop with those dates to come for purchases, HERFs, cash sheets, you name it. We'll just have rotating themes for each of the labs. Any questions for any of those items? Yes, ma'am. Johnson.
Okay, I have a question for each item you presented, so I'm starting with the first one, staffing in your business services. Are you able to provide what opportunities that you are short on, and how does it affect the campus as a whole?
We said provided the opportunities that we are, I didn't hear that part.
You have a
Your
shortage, your vacancies.
Yes, so we'll have one GFU senior accountant position, accounting tech position, and we'll bring in 2 GFR accounting tech positions.
Yeah, and if you go back, Jocelyn, to last meeting, and look at the meeting notes and the agenda for the last meeting, all of the vice presidents brought forth using the memo system, the available positions that are in their respective areas. So you'll see both of those positions there.
The GFUs, correct? Yes, and actually GFR as well, sorry.
Okay, yes, I do recall that. Are these new positions or vacant or retirement or?
We have two vacant. One was a promotion, and one will be a new grant funded temporary position.
Yeah, and it's really not a new position, it's an unfreezing an existing position that was frozen, right? And I'm just correcting because,
Okay.
you know, these terms mean different things to different people.
Right.
And so we
Yeah, you're right.
we have one frozen position that will be unfrozen using GFR. And then we have 2 promotions. And I want to congratulate Lydia and Reggie, who promoted in business services that then create 2 vacancies in the area. But again, if folks go back to the last meeting that we had, we went over this in detail in terms of the respective vice presidents and their vacancies in their area.
Thank you for that correction.
Okay, for workshop on travel. So if individuals have outstanding travel requests that they have not completed, what is your advice, your recommendation, how they should get those completed?
Prior to
In the
the
last.
lab?
Yes.
You can call or email to business services, pretty much on a daily basis, we're doing that.
Is there a point of contact though?
Cecilia,
And just for clarity, Jocelyn, going back to item 7C on the HERF form, this fiscal close applies to everything, not just products. So if somebody traveled in the prior fiscal year, that's a whole separate conversation versus effective July 1. So, right, our budgeting cycle goes from July 1 through June 30th. So if somebody has a purchase or travel, there's going to be that's a whole separate conversation if you didn't submit it by June 30th.
Thank you.
Mhm.
And so the last thing was when you, item on the Earth Fund, Form 7B. It said it requires a meeting with the area dean, VP, and VPAS. That's all together or separate meetings? Or the person that's submitting the request, do they initiate these meetings, or you guys have separate meetings without the person that initiated?
once it goes to the dean or the manager, the VP, area VP and the VPAS will confer. Because the natural routing would either go to the VP and then me, so it's during that process.
So is there any way that you can say the routing process versus saying a meeting? Because this individuals may think they need to schedule a meeting with these areas.
We can reword that because it'll be different than the routing process in which we don't meet. It's just routed via email, so we'll actually meet. So if we can reword that's not something that the requestor needs to initiate.
Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
So no,
Yes.
I want to say thanks for coming to the Academic Senate meeting yesterday. It was super helpful, and I'm really looking forward to learning more about it. I had a couple of thoughts and questions in particular about the HERF fund forms, and it follows up on the Academic Senate meeting yesterday when I suggested that actually faculty be involved in creating the process. So I love that you did this and you guys are taking so seriously our concerns and moving on it. It feels like in looking over this process, we're missing some steps that faculty will really actually need and could help so that it's clear on both sides, so that you understand where faculty would get tripped up and that we understand like your needs and your processes. Specifically, one thing that I see is for the VPAS in cooperation with the VPSS and VPI will determine if funding is available. It seems to me that the requester, or at least the chair, should know in advance so that the process doesn't actually get started by the requester if funding isn't available, because otherwise it's just a ton of work that can't be funded. So it seems to me that some clear communication in budgeting and what is available and some training on that would be super helpful. Another thing from the faculty perspective, to not waste their time, would also be a really clear understanding, and I think you talked about this yesterday in the Academic Senate meeting, about communicating where it is in the process. So in specific, I'm thinking about 7C. Oftentimes, some things are delivered and they're not actually given to the person who has requested it. So the person who's requested it doesn't know. Or I know that there are a bunch of programs and computers for graphic design that have been sitting over in tech that have not been delivered to students. So we don't always know when it is actually delivered or if it's going to get delivered in time to do this. So I'm thinking about a couple things. So the communication about where it is in the process and like, look, something from business services perhaps to say, hey, this end of the fiscal year, you have this, this, and this out. Has it been delivered? Is there some way we can track that? Because it's not something that a faculty member making this request is going to know off the top of their head, right? Because it's not going to come to them if they're ordering computer tech stuff. It's actually not going to get delivered to them. It's not like they're going to deliver it to me in T353, right?
Yes.
So those are just two things I think about from the faculty perspective that would be super helpful. And I know there's a ton of faculty who'd be happy to.
Yeah, well, that's something that we'll continue to reinforce. We do send out an open PO report. I'm not sure that everyone's familiar with it, but we'll include that, incorporate that in the training, to how to use that report. And that we'll use that in the future lab, actually, and reinforce in our communication at the year end process.
Yeah, but the piece of this to Sunav's question, particularly the open PO on whether it was received, that communication absolutely occurs with the dean, right? And so we wouldn't want to involve faculty in that process with regards to this form. That communication would happen between the business office and the dean, who then should communicate with the faculty member. And that's the way that it traditionally happens. The initial piece about faculty involvement in the development of the form, really this follows a pre-existing administrative procedure. Really all we did was take something that is already in place that most people don't read and try to capture everything in one place so that we can share it with folks. And so this follows a BP and AP that's already in existence that goes through the district's governance approval process. So there wouldn't necessarily be, this is not anything new. This is really just capturing all those things in one place so that we can share it. The piece about notifying faculty whether funding is available or not is an interesting one on a couple of different points. One, I absolutely understand when and where that can be done, that it should be, absolutely. But I don't want to infer this, but this does happen. What we don't want to do is stop someone who has an idea for something that we might be able to fund in another area, that there are funds available using this form, which has absolutely happened. Maybe Tilly doesn't have the money for chemistry kits, but we have another funding source that we can use to fund it, and this form becomes the mechanism to be able to do that.
I definitely understand that. I think that what I'm talking about is sort of two-pronged. One, in terms of, I'll address that first. I think that conversation should be happening before we ask faculty to put in work on a system that is onerous and that they're not good at doing, so that they can have that conversation and say, okay, that's not actually her funds, we can't do that through this, but you know what, we might be able to do something else. So let's have a conversation about it before we ask you to put in a lot of labor in an area that A, you're not contracted to do, and B, you're not good at, so we're
Well, I'm
not
talking about the
wasting
form though, Suna. I'm talking about the form generates that conversation. I think you're talking about PeopleSoft, which is two different conversations, unless I'm wrong, right? The form generates the discussion as to a need that somebody has and how we can go about meeting the need. If we're talking about the actual ordering process, that's a separate conversation.
So this form will be just to get those funds approved, correct?
This is a form that's used to say, I have a need
Yes.
or a desire.
And this is way before we go into PeopleSoft.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
go to your
Yes.
dean, I have an idea, here's what I wanna talk about, if the dean says, let me go see if there's money or not, they come back, then you finish the form and move it forward.
Oh, okay, that sounds very clear. What I would add to this form is a timeline. So people know what to expect and when they will be getting a response, because the problem is when we follow process and then for A or B, it's the communication piece. You all know, you will hear me about communication forever and ever in my life. It's the communication piece that we get lost into it. So it's not so much this piece, this makes sense. I mean, this is very clear. Everybody, we have a form now that we can fill out, send it to our dean and VPs. They will approve or not approve the funding, and then we do all the heavy lifting with the PeopleSoft. But the piece is that even when we get to PeopleSoft, then there are issues that happen once the PeopleSoft process was submitted. And also we wanna, so her fund is temporary, right? And it's a one-time thing. So we won't have these issues, forever. This is just a temporary. So that's clear, but who is in charge of the HERF funds? It's VPAS or all VPs have HERF funds to distribute?
Yes, all.
So all VPs have, okay,
Yes.
HERF to distribute. Okay, that was just, I wanted to clarify
Yeah,
that.
so
but-
in prior meetings, Maria Jose, we brought in, once the allocations go out, those allocations will come here. So, I think I mentioned in a prior meeting that we are expecting, X number of dollars in, state block funds. Those funds will be distributed equally between the vice presidents and myself. So that works out to be about 1.3 million. I think that was 2 or 3 agendas ago. It'll work out to be about 1.3 million of state block funds to each of the VPs and myself. So the people, the deans, and this council were provided that dollar amount so that everybody knows what's available in each division, right? So each vice president has about $1.3 million to allocate. I have 1.3 million to allocate because Susan and Caesar report directly and the foundation reports directly to me. So we've said it publicly, and I've actually sent it out in my weekly or my monthly updates, what dollar amount is now available. There's also about 1.2 million available in outreach retention funds. We went over that in 2 agendas ago and said that outreach and marketing have 400,000. Retention, which was awarded to the 2 vice presidents, have another 400,000. I mean, you multiply that by 2, 3, you've got the 1.2 million in outreach funds that are being distributed. Those things then go back through their respective councils. So the VPI has her council, VPSS has his council, same with John. So that information is communicated, which then triggers that this is the form that they work with their respective constituents to allocate those funds. Tilly.
As a matter of fact, people know I chase them and come back and say, according to my records, I haven't seen you spending your money. So I even go back, we all do, we all go back and say, where are we spending? Because we're asked every week, where are we on these spending? So we go back to those that were already allocated. And then there's some that have never been allocated because it's a big fund and like I wait for people to give those requests. And then we look to see if those requests didn't meet the criteria of using the funds or not. That's usually the first thing. You know, if there's money, but in this, do they meet the criteria? And then if not, if it's such a big thing, then to be honest with you, going back to one of those numbers, the VPs meet every week. We do have those conversations and say, hey, Marciano, so-and-so needs this, but my funds won't cover. Do we have other funds? So we actually do process and try to figure that piece out for people. So I really think it just goes back to the deans. The deans are the ones that need to keep us informed. That is the most, that's where I'm gonna come back and say, I look for my information.
And then I would also say this again respectively, because there absolutely is always an opportunity to improve communication and to streamline things and to keep all the constituency groups informed, right? If you go to the agenda that we just approved, item 6 on the agenda is the allocation that was communicated in the last meeting that clearly delineates who's getting what money and that sort of thing. I would also say, Maria Jose, we gave out in the last 2 years about $10 million each year. So if you look at the total amount of money we gave away or allocated or utilized, and you look at the actual problems that we had, I would argue that the system actually is working. Now, that doesn't downplay that we've had a couple of hiccups, but when you look at on a normal year, our college has a discretionary budget of about $1 million. The last 2 years, we've had $10 million with no increased staffing in the budget office, actually decreased staffing. And I could probably count the number of problems on both of my hands. With $10 million, I give a lot of credit to the folks who are pushing these these approvals through, the orders through, but keep coming forward with the concerns and the challenges. But when we spend $10 million and we're usually only accustomed to spending about $1 million, this just comes with the territory of having more resources and not increased staffing to support those resources. So while I would love to be able to have someone, and I would challenge, I would invite the faculty, and I did this, to come with me and hang out with Francisco. I went and delivered with Francisco. We have one full-time person in shipping and receiving and 2 Nances. I worked with them the entire day and delivered some of these computers in question. And so I would remind us, we're coming out of a hiring freeze. And while these are very real situations that the classified staff in some of these areas, number 1, number 2, number 1.5, but these are very real matters that we're dealing with, and they are one-time funds. It's a gift and a curse of having this much money all of a sudden that eventually is going to go away in the next year or so.
Yes, thank you. And I did just want to add that it isn't a perfect process, but it works fairly well, given that we received this cash infusion of about $22 billion over the last 2 years or so. And we want to help you spend it and provide the tools and resources. So going back to item number 4, the conversation of what Tilly alluded to, the conversation we do had, if funding is available, that may sound like a negative reinforcement, but oftentimes the allocation in which it was intended is not used. So we may go to Tilly and say,
We have to reallocate.
yeah, so we reallocated. So funding may not be available. So Tilly may have actually used her allocation, but Marciano may not have. Marciano, do you mind if we repurpose this? So that's what we mean by that. And there could be other restricted funding sources as well.
Yeah, and then there's a number of other factors, like you may get a quote for 300,000 and the actual cost comes in at 250, or the actual cost comes in at 350, and then it becomes a shell game. But we absolutely hear the concerns and we are working to address them. But given the volume of money that we've allocated and the actual number of problems we had, it's actually pretty decent that the faculty and the staff and everybody is working collaboratively to try to get the things to the people who are working them.
I mean, I agree with everything you're saying. I'm loving the transparency and the conversation about it. I'm still concerned about timeline and efficiency and who put the request when, and when is the response given to the people that are putting the request, because I don't see anything in this form. I'm just concerned. This is a paper, we hand the paper, everybody has a million papers to deal with. So is there a process or a software where we can just streamline the process, where people see the order in which the requests are coming in, and then say, within 2 weeks, we will give you an answer whether we can do it or cannot do it. And this is just one thing, and I understand that HERF funds is a unique situation, so I'm like, if we're doing good, I agree with that, but then there is the other part of once we go into people's help and the requisition, so that can be another conversation for all of us to have.
No, I think I can answer that. Very funny.
Yeah.
Going back to our discussion yesterday, the vendor that I'm working with, FormStack, that we used before, will accomplish just that, where you can, it's all automated. It's a SASS, software as a system.
So you think within 2 weeks, we can get a response, 2-3 weeks?
It typically doesn't take,
These usually take 2 days.
Yeah, a couple days.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then once the
I'm
organization.
sorry, I have to interrupt. No, I have to interrupt because I filled out a request back on 12/14/2021 for 2 computers for Bill Stewart and I. We don't have computers.
So that's a whole different story, different category. Computers, they go in here, but they actually go into a whole nother place, because computers were denied for the Department of Education.
Okay, but this is exactly sort of what I'm
And I
talking
get
about
you,
in
but
terms of
that time,
timeline.
we didn't have.
Employees who do not have functioning computers, software, Wi-Fi, et cetera, necessary to complete their job. So that's the second priority here. And I love that you guys are trying to do this, but I also feel as if you're telling us one thing, but the experience on the ground is very different. And I personally have experience of something that was submitted in 2021, and I have followed up just about every 2-3 months. And I have not seen the computer. Bill and I are still working off our own personal computers. And another person in my department has a computer that takes 30 minutes to boot up. So I'm concerned about this timeline. You say the timeline is 2 or 3 days, and it always feels like there are exceptions. So what faculty are asking for is a very transparent process and a timeline, like Maria Jose said, that we can say, okay, this was turned in, we're going to get an answer in this time, or at least we can see where it's at.
So I'm gonna take that one offline because I remember those specifically and those are a little unique. Those are when they moved in over to the other area.
Yeah, it always feels like it's unique though, Tilly.
No, I'll take care of it and Robbie and I will
I
get.
mean, the only reason we're pushing back is because faculty does feel like we're not being listened to with the concerns of people doing this for years now. So this is not new, this is not something we're gonna fix in a day. It's just we're trying to really be heard that we have issues with the requisition process. It's really toxic for, and not just faculty, I'm sure classified professionals do it, you have to do it for travel. It's a difficult process, so we just wanna be acknowledged that it's not just this, it's much deeper than that. And we need to have those conversations about what really is going on in what people are going through, not rather than, yes, this I think is gonna be great, I think this is great, and if it's so clear, it should be pretty easy. But then it's the other end, right, when the requisitions are made, something is going on that we don't understand what's going on, so that's where the conversations need to happen
Yeah,
in
and-
terms of that process.
And again, I hear you, and again, respectfully, when you're spending $10 million and we at best are talking about hundred thousands of dollars of issues, it's very easy to focus on the piece that's not working versus the piece that is working. And we'll continue to streamline the process and get the help. And so now I would ask you to forward me those emails so that I can see, because I can tell you I've done a number of videos where we talked about computers, and I've walked down to Robbie's area myself, and I know that there are computers. So there is a disconnect between two people saying they don't have computers, and there are definitely computers down in Robbie's area. And Robbie, as recent as a week or so ago, sent an email to the campus with the request form for computers. So there definitely is a disconnect. And what I'm gonna ask Janelli to do is to put Robbie back on the agenda to talk about the computer request form process, because there's a disconnect. And so, Suna, I hear you. I would ask you to forward that to me so that I can look into it. I'm gonna keep us moving because we have a number of other agenda items.
I just had 2 comments about the form, if you don't mind. My question was on, will it be online? Or is it already online, the new form? And then about the new vendors. So as we go through, that's just a nice process for people to say to their vendors, make sure that you've gone through SAM.gov. I think that's what I heard you say. Okay, thank you.
Correct.
And for the record, Suna, are we looking for IBMs or Macs?
I want to point out that this actually isn't about me and my computer. I'm using that as a very particular example of what I'm hearing from other faculty. I'm hearing from one department that has ordered computers for their students that their students need and are not getting to the students. And in fact, now the warranties are running out on software programs. So it's not simply me, it's more of a systemic problem. And that's why we keep pushing on it, because we need clear processes and we need we need transparency about where everything is in the process. So I'm less worried about my particular laptop because.
But do you mind if I ask that question?
What question?
What kind of computers did you request? Were
We
they
requested
Macs?
Macs.
Okay.
Yes.
And I know we're gonna move on, and thank you, Tilly, that was my other question, where can faculty find this form, if they, all classified professionals, like, where is it? Is it on the website or
It's
wherever?
on the Business Services website. You won't see them on next iteration until tomorrow or Thursday.
Okay, and the other one, that SAM.gov, I actually was just emailed today about it, because faculty that does programming, that are the ones that are bringing in a lot of the programming and events and speakers, they just found out that now
We all
people
just
have
found
to
out.
go through
We all
SAM.gov,
just found out.
and this is a district
Yes,
decision?
the federal government notified us last week.
Yeah. So what they're telling us is for anybody that we would like to invite to come speak here on campus, they have to have an account.
Any
like
vendor,
an
any
account
vendor,
Federal funds,
any vendor.
For
Federal
SAM.gov.
funds.
correct.
Federal funds.
Anyone who's getting paid out of federal funds.
Anyone that is getting paid out of it. Yes, and okay,
So John, let's make sure as you send this document out, that you send another update that talks about this. We all just found this out this week. This is a change in the federal government. None of us agree with it,
okay,
but as long as we receive their funding, they get to dictate how we use it.
okay.
Is it less than desirable? I was gonna say jacked up.
Yeah,
It really is. It's a burden to all of us to have to do this. You know?
well, I'm sure many of the people that will come and speak here, they won't be able to do that. So that.
I think we can get creative about other funding sources that we have.
Okay,
And those who have a concern about that, we'll do our best to try to identify other funding sources when and where available. We're all trying to process this right now.
okay.
It is holding up a number of things, and we're not a fan of it.
But it's not going away.
But can I
It's
also?
not going away.
Not going away, so it's gonna stay there.
But I gotta say that there, I know you just said that, people aren't gonna be able to make it,
Yeah.
but I do know that we've worked with some vendors who have done it and it has worked. It takes time, so it's
Okay.
not something that you can say, I want this vendor next week.
Yeah.
And they're gonna get it approved, because it takes them, I don't know, what are we looking at, 2-3 weeks at least for a vendor to get
On
to the
average.
SAM.gov problem or process. So it does work, like once we, and I think part of this is the education of the vendors, because this is all new for them. I mean, Alana and I can tell you, we're gonna talk about Latinx Heritage Month, how many vendors have said, well, I don't know that I can do that. Like, I don't know that I wanna take the time. And our answer really is, like, this is our process, like, this isn't what we wanna do, but if you wanna get paid and wanna be a part of ours, this is the only way that we can pay you. And so we've had some vendors that have said, great, we're gonna do this, it's gonna take us a while. We've had other vendors frankly have just said, we're not gonna do it. And so it's forced us to look elsewhere for other vendors. So it is a little bit of a challenge.
No, but thank you for that, because now people know that it takes about 2-3
It's 2-3
weeks. So
weeks
if they
easily.
wanna bring somebody that is doable, but it takes time, so.
For them to go through that SAM.gov process.
To
about
do
2
it
weeks.
early on, so they can prepare, okay,
And
that's good.
it was the worst time for the federal government to do this. We're in
Yeah.
year 3 at first, and they're just not implementing this, so I feel the pain. But I do, as Ricky was alluding to, we can use some categorical funds,
Okay.
because it applies to funds from $1,200 to $1,499. So anything outside of that range.
Yeah, and I don't wanna make a blanket statement saying that we will. We can.
Explore.
So my favorite term is it depends, right? Because those categorical programs also have allowable, unallowable usage as well. So it's important as those matters transpire that you work with the dean and or vice president over the area. I mean, we're always gonna get people paid. And what I am most concerned about is somebody delivering a service that have not been authorized to do so. And so, John, let's make sure we get out a couple of messages to the campus about that. And we definitely hear you all in the transparency of things. When I worked with Francisco that day, all we delivered that particular day was computers. And so we'll go back to the drawing board and assess where the bottleneck is and make sure that we address that matter. That's why you all heard me early on say that we're looking to bring in additional help with Sean and Eric advances in some of these areas, because frankly, the available staff that we have, you can't go off of staffing for $900,000 worth of purchases, and then all of a sudden you're making $10 million worth of purchases. And so we got to figure out how to get the staffing in place.
Thank you for taking all the time.
No worries. Sometimes we have to get uncomfortable to get comfortable.
Yeah, I agree.
Marciano, number 5, food pantry.
Yeah, just a quick update on the food pantry. First, I want to acknowledge the hard work that Alan has done in trying to get our food pantry to a place where we are hopefully going to be opening soon. We like a lot of the other things, there were some bottlenecks in terms of getting some supplies here, things that got delivered, but then needed to get things set up. But we finally have the food pantry with some shelving and refrigeration, and I think we're in a better place now. We're working with Caesar to do all the graphic work that needs to be done with our hope of having a soft opening, hopefully by the beginning of October. And so that's the kind of the plan. Adon and I are doing a walkthrough with the Feeding San Diego folks to look at our food pantry and as they get their blessings so that we can start getting money from the food from them to be able to do that. But in the meantime, we'll continue to do our Hunger Action Days twice a month. So the first Tuesday and the third Monday of every month, we'll continue to do that. But the food pantry / Fantastique should be hopefully our opening sometime by October, and we're in the process of hiring a basic needs coordinator that will run the food pantry. And so that's a big part of this, getting the staffing part. Questions? Yes.
Where are you located?
They are going to be located in the T building. It is the very last incubator on the bottom floor, basically right next to Repro Graphics. So it's the very first one. When you walk down the hallway, it's the first incubator on the left-hand side. And it's a really nice space. It's a very, very nice space.
Yes, it is.
Thank you, Dr. Sposs.
Yes, it is. We have a number of programs that are moving into what was originally intended for CACT. And for those of you who are not familiar with CACT, it was our entrepreneurship program connected to manufacturing. And they have incubator bays that we have not rented. And so we're putting proper use to those areas. But I still do have a desire to have some businesses in the manufacturing space be able to occupy those. We do have a process at the college for securing spaces that we went over in another meeting. Other questions about the food pantry? I am eagerly waiting for it to open. I want to thank Adon and Francisco and others who helped to expedite it getting open. We know how important it is for our students and our employees to have access to nutritious food. It's hard to study and be successful if you're sitting in the class hungry. If there are no other questions, we'll turn it over to Adon to provide an update on Latinx Heritage Month. I'm going to ask you to come down here so that folks who are watching can see you.
Yeah, so it's in the email this morning to the district in regards to the Chicanx Latinx Heritage Month calendar that we have put together. I really want to thank everyone who's contributed to it. We're really trying to not just provide experiences for students, but also for faculty and staff. So you'll see opportunities in regards to professional development. Another sort of group of folks preparing to attend Haku in a couple of weeks. And then we're looking at some other opportunities as well that are listed in there, including the Colegas inaugural conference, which is coming out of the California Community Colleges system. And really, we're also trying to create an opportunity for us to really engage in these conversations. So not just being able to capture these activities during this month, but also to serve as a foundation of how we can do this better throughout the year. So really, we're hoping that this doesn't stop here. We are going to have these identity-specific celebrations throughout the year. We're already in the conversation of an LGBTQ History Month in partnership as a district, similar to what we're doing with the Undocumented Student Action Week as a district. And then we're also looking at some other programming coming up, like Filipino American History Month and others throughout the fall and the spring semester. So we're trying to really be proactive in creating these longer timelines of recruitment, of events, activities, resources. So more information will be coming up already in relation to the spring semester. Yeah, I don't know if there's any specific questions that you have about this calendar. We're just very excited and thankful that we have faculty, classified professionals and students who are going to be part of not just the planning of these events, but as panelists and participants.
Did I hear you say that you emailed the calendar?
Yeah, this morning it was sent out to the district. It has the link to the Google Calendar.
I shared it with my students.
Yes, thank you. We received already some positive feedback, and Yaneli also has the short direct link to the calendar. And everything is linked in there, so access to resources, links to websites, some folks Instagram, it's information as that's the best way of communicating. So that is out there this one.
Great. Any questions for Adon?
If I can just make a comment, so as Alon mentioned, the plan is to really work on creating our calendar of events for all of the groups that we're going to be celebrating. And so tied to the SAM.gov part, as we're thinking about things, we're reaching out to vendors ahead of time and saying like, hey, we always work with you in the spring, make sure you're doing this. So this is just another example of us having to really kind of shift our thinking in terms of really pre-planning. I know, like I said, we talked about this with World Cultures and why they do that, because we know that we're jumping or we're falling into some of these, facing some of these hurdles. So getting folks ahead of time, if we know that we're going to be doing something, for instance, for Women's History Month, that we're planning ahead, thinking about those speakers and making sure that they're following our process.
Almost a semester in advance.
Yeah.
And then with food vendors, something that is also insurances, they have an expiration timeframe. So even though they're in the system already, it could be 6 months or a year later, that you're like, oh, they're already in the system. And then they get kicked back because they're like, oh, they need to update their insurance. So something to keep in mind as well. Sorry.
No, I just wanted to clarify, this change in the SAM.gov things, that extends way beyond PERC. Any federal funds that you get. So it would be lovely if we at some point could get like, hey, anyone who's doing this, you need to be planning like 3 to 4 months in advance so that people are aware of that upfront.
Yeah, and that's the communication that I was speaking to. John is going to send out with the PERC funds. And but also, I'm sure that the vice presidents will speak with the deans and the chairs in their respective meetings as well. And frankly, we would hope that everybody here as part of this council has in communication, effective communication, will take that back to your respective constituency groups. This is new to all of us, and it is going to be an additional layer of bureaucracy that none of us needed in our lives. The other thing I would say and remind us, and I think Maria Jose and I and Ebony and I had this discussion, that Adon is providing leadership to the Ideas Committee, which is our Diversity Equity Committee, which I believe you're on.
Accessibility, yeah.
And his office does in fact provide requisition support for folks who are putting programs on, who receive funding through that particular committee. And so we continue to have discussions about support. And the fact of the matter, folks, we just don't have enough classified professionals given the amount of budget that we're dealing with now. This Thursday, the district is going to approve a $982 million budget. That's nearly $1 billion budget. Our budget with GFR and GFU is over $100 million, probably close to 150 with GFR. You know, the funding that we receive really is intended 50% of it based on California law for instruction, which it should be. But let's face it, the accountants support instruction too, in terms of purchasing things. The folks who deliver things support instruction too. But it doesn't allow us to spend money in those particular areas, and we're feeling it as a result of that. But just for those who are interested in putting on an event in one of our many cultural affinity group days, it is Adon's office who provides support with requisitions. And so if folks need help, they can get with Adon, and certainly they can get with Marciano in terms of a lot of the money coming out of equity and MSI and other funding sources. Anything else, Adon, on the Latinx Heritage Month?
No, that's it.
Thank you for being here. Thank you for everything you do for our college.
Thank you.
I'm going to turn it over to Susan Murray, who has the next two items.
One of the things that Ricky asked me to bring back here is just kind of a reminder that we did complete the work on our social justice commitment.
Yes.
At the end of last spring. It was at the very end of the academic year, and so there was not necessarily a lot of time to discuss it and talk about how we're going to be using this. But it is complete, it is published on the website on the same page as the mission statement. And we are already talking about it in development of the equity plan, for one example, and we'll be starting a conversation now that we have this in place about how we more explicitly incorporate equity considerations into other processes like program review. That's part of the agenda for the city planning meeting, first one of the year will be tomorrow. So this is just a reminder to the college that this is here and ready to be used, and we can, through the ideas committee or any other groups, we can certainly facilitate more conversation.
Yeah, because it did go through all the constituents. I
Yes.
remember last semester.
But as we come into person, and I'll just tell you where this is coming from, I'm on the accreditation site visit team for East LA College. Tilly is on for one of the other LA schools. And I'm used to these things being posted, and since we approved it at the end of the year, and we haven't had an opportunity to push this out and market it in ways that will refresh us and remind us of this commitment. So I just whispered to Caesar in our next monthly newsletter to have an article about this. I also asked him to push out some banners and posters that can go in various places on the campus, so that when we go into spaces like this, we can be reminded of both our mission and some of our commitments. And so we'll work to do that in various places on campus, because this is huge. This is monumental for us to have this statement, but it does no good for us to place it on the shelf and not see it as a constant reminder. And so speaking of constant reminder, I just wanted to present it to us and share it with the campus. Janelle's going to send this back out to the entire campus as a reminder that we discussed this here, but expect to see it in places in the coming months on campus.
I have a question, just purely clarification inquiry. For the social justice commitment, is there a particular reason why we, in the second and third paragraphs, we did past tense as opposed to what we committed to? So we are committed to providing as opposed to we commit to do this. So in the first paragraph, we say we commit to closing the opportunity. And then in the second paragraphs, we are acting as if our commitment is already there instead of an active force that we have to do every day. I'm just wondering if there was talk about that, or if there was any particular reason why that was put in the past tense.
No, nobody brought it up before.
Yeah,
You're the
okay.
first one that noticed that little change in verb and in action, so it was presented like this and it was voted on. I remember at my Senate, at the classified professional Senate at its spot, but
Yeah, I'm not asking for a change, I was just wondering, I was like literally inquiry as a philosopher, those things make a difference to us, so thank you.
and I mean, that's a valid point. I don't know if that, because it matters, the verb, so if that's an easy change and it's more of a present commitment rather than a past commitment, but something that we are doing every day, I don't see why it couldn't be. But I don't know if that has to go through
Yeah,
all the constituents again for voting.
I was literally, it was inquiry, what do you guys do with it? I'm not.
Well, in this case, I actually agree with you. Well, not in this case. I actually agree with you that to hear you say we commit versus we are committed, and I don't know, maybe to some degree, maybe semantics, but I think it is more powerful hearing you say we commit to. And, as the academic senate president, you get to determine whether you would want to take it back or whether your folks would commit to changing the word to an active verb. What is your pleasure?
I get to decide.
So
I actually agree too, that it should be more of an action, not a past tense, but actually we commit to doing it. So we remind ourselves that we should be, striving to do that, not so much given that we are committed, but that we are
Well,
in commitment with it.
I'll say as a college president, I never know what's going to be controversial and not. And the things I think aren't going to be controversial are, the things I think are usually aren't. And so if it is the pleasure of the group, the thing is, we need to formalize the process. So let's bring this back, Janelle, for an action item, because not here as an action item today. That'll give you, Riose and Sean, and I'll work with Jocelyn to take it back to your respective groups. I'm going to, whose house is this? Is it you or Caesar or?
That's a good question.
Who made this?
This was a work group, right?
No, I know that. I'm
Yeah.
talking about the physical document, though. Who-
I don't know, I copied it off the website
Okay.
about an hour and a half ago.
So
We're all
there you go.
together. Listen, we all do it. We're all helping each other.
So I'm gonna ask Caesar to make the suggested edits, send it out to the group, and then we'll add this back to College Council in the next meeting, which will be 2 meetings from now, as a formal vote action item.
So 2 meetings from.
Yeah, because the next meeting is going to be our planning goal setting, so it'll need to be the meeting afterwards. And so Caesar will send it to the group, and I'll ask that the leaders of the constituency group present the edited version or the proposed edited version, and then we'll bring it back.
Yeah, and we can vote on it in one day if we need to. We don't have to do two.
And speaking of voting, we have an opportunity to update our mission. Sean, was that a hand you had?
Yeah, I was gonna make, I didn't know if we had manufactured any plaques or anything.
Not yet.
Okay.
So now's a good time to make the edit.
Only got as far as the website, so yeah, no posters yet. Janelle, I don't know if you are able to share, things on screen to you, but, I have, a copy of the mission statement, which is, printed for everybody that's in the room. It's also on our website. And that, it's the other one. Yeah. That actually, the mission statement that we currently have dates to 2015. And so it has been a while since it has undergone a review. And I think we can agree that a lot of things have changed since then, not only the pandemic and navigating our response to that, but how we articulate and prioritize equity and social justice, and how we understand disproportionate impact. Those concepts were not really part of the conversation 7 years ago. So I spoke about this with Ricky, and what we would like to recommend is that we form a work group out of College Council to work with me to design an inclusive process for updating the mission statement, and then bring that back here for approval, and then it would go out and involve all of the constituency groups. And Janelle, if you could jump to the next page. This is particularly significant because there are a lot of aspects of accreditation that relate to our mission statement, because the mission statement is really supposed to be a foundation for all of our planning. And if the world had been perfect and we hadn't had COVID and hadn't had to do things remotely, we probably would have done this before we updated the strategic plan. But things don't always work the way we would have them work if we could control everything. So, you know, these are the accreditation expectations around what a mission statement should do. It should describe our educational purpose, who we serve, and the degrees and credentials that we offer. It defines our institutional commitment to student learning and achievement. We should also be able to present evidence that our programs and services at the college are in alignment with our mission, and that we use data to determine how effectively we're accomplishing our mission. And there is actually an expectation in the standards that mission statements are periodically reviewed and updated. So this is a good time to kick off this process.
You get lucky every now and then. So what we, as Susan is saying, is we're hoping, being that we have a communications faculty member and a philosophy faculty member on this committee, that they can maybe join our public information officer who's on the committee, council, and our dean of institutional effectiveness. And then Sean, if you wouldn't mind, if you all are okay, if Susan can take the lead in connecting with you all to start this process. And maybe Susan, you can pick out some examples from other colleges and that sort of thing, and then over the course of the semester or however long it takes, preferably no later this spring, so that it can be in our documents and that sort of thing, that we can come up with a new mission statement. And I have to say, I was a tad bit confused, call it COVID fog or otherwise, because I thought when we were working on the social justice commitment, I actually thought we were working on the mission. It wound up being the other
We
one.
talked about it, didn't we? We said, now we have to go over the missions and the values, because they needed updated, but a little bit of that work was done as we did the social justice commitment work. So there are some documents and some things to start with on the work. And Susan did a really good job putting together a large group of people and then kind of focusing on what we needed to do for a whole year. So this one will have to be a little quicker.
Yes, but I think you're absolutely right that because we did all that other work on the social justice commitment and on the strategic priorities, I think that gives us a pretty clear focus when we're gonna revisit the mission statement.
So I'd like to see if someone would like to make a formal recommendation that we form a subcommittee to work on the mission. This is an action item 7B.
This is Sean Ryan, and I'd like to move to make the mission statement a formal item, an item for review and discussion.
Thank you.
Point of being.
Well, let's, because there'll be a discussion after the session.
María José Silán Pérez, I second.
Yeah, so a question, so maybe I misheard Susan. So is this subcommittee to work on the process or is it to actually work on the statement?
I think what we would do is define the process and which includes the process by which we could bring options out to the college or a recommendation that would go through all of the constituency.
Yes, thank you. I want to just further state that options are usually a good idea so that we're not starting from scratch, and then folks can do exactly what we did today with the social justice commitment and edit it. I mean, these are living documents, so you'll always be able to edit it, but we want to start somewhere, given that Maria Jose and Susan, to some degree or another, Caesar were involved in the social justice commitment developments, that we can do it the same way and then take it back out to the groups so people have an opportunity to feedback. And it'll ultimately take its approval, of course, like all of our other constituency shared governance processes, and then one back up here. Any other discussion, clarifications? All in favor of us forming a subcommittee to do exactly what we just outlined, develop the process and offer options of a mission statement, indicate by raising your hand. Any in opposition? Looks like motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Number 8, Susan.
Okay. this came up in the last meeting or came forward in the last meeting, and we are bringing it back as an action item. And that is revolves around the name of our institutional planning document that we have been working on an update to. In particular, whether we want to include the term master or master plan as part of that document. Several people had shared examples of other colleges and other places where that terminology is used, where organizations have stepped back from it because of the connections it has to the history of slavery, particularly in this country. And we did put out a survey, I would say that didn't get a huge response rate. You know, this is the first beginning of the semester and everybody's really busy. But about a third of the respondents did not feel comfortable with using the word master as part of the document. And as one of the commenters pointed out, which I thought was really an important way to view this, you know, it's not necessarily something that should be decided by a survey. If people identify that this is something that they are not comfortable with in line with our commitment to social justice, we probably go ahead and change it. And so, and then there were a number, there were several options suggested that were included in the survey, and then a number of people suggested alternatives. So where we are right now, if I could recommend a little brief activity here for a few minutes, is that we consider some options that do not have the word.
Let me jump in just real quick, and I humbly apologize for interrupting you. I think there's a step before we get to the suggestions, and I want to do the step before we get to the suggestions, because there are implications here with us producing these documents that need to be ready for the board meeting, right? And so once a document is produced, we absolutely can change it. And so as a matter of process, before we get into the options, somebody would need to make a motion that they want to support removing master out of these documents. Because if there is no approval of that, then there's no need to go into what the options are. Does that make sense as a way of process? Like first, we don't have a formal motion on the table, which is why this is, somebody would have to make a motion that we consider removing master out of these two documents. Then there would be a discussion. Then we would move to the next step. So I just don't want to get ahead of us, and I again apologize. Is there a motion on the table to remove master from?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Tilly, a second.
Okay. Discussion. Any further discussion?
So just to be clear, so that from that survey is where this idea was born. So a third of those that participated did not sit well with the word master.
Mm-hmm. And it didn't originate in that survey, it originated in discussions. It came up in several points. I had people share articles when, you know, I sent out an email about the educational master plan, and they sent back an article saying, you know, have you seen this kind of thing? It came up in a discussion over the summer among the institutional effectiveness deans, because we are all finishing or about to finish similar processes. And, you know, just kind of asking each other, you know, has this conversation come up on your campus? How has it played out? And, you know, that was during the summer when there weren't a lot of people to reach out to. So that was, then I took it to Ricky, and then we decided to bring it forward here.
Yeah, and I would say this there aren't very many things that catch me by surprise, but this caught me by surprise. Because I actually use the word master to mean mastery. Not master in the context of slavery, which, in the English language, it actually is one of the hardest languages because our words mean multiple things. And that is my concern here. Are we connecting something? Are we connecting dots that are actually not connected? Given the word master definitely has a connection to slavery, but it also has other connections. I would offer, given the time matter involved in this, that for consideration, that we move forward with the printing of these documents. And if it is so the pleasure of this group to change the names, that we do so in a process that we're not going to complete today. Does that make sense to folks? Are people okay with that?
Yeah, I'd like to make a comment.
Yes.
Yeah, so I agree with you. I think that language is a living, breathing thing, and there are many connotations to words. I hear the comment Susan made, that was made on the survey, and I think that's important. I have heard from faculty members, a number of them, that they are concerned that while we are all committed to social justice, they are concerned that sometimes we do things for window dressing. And so there was some concerns expressed to me that this was just something that, well, it will make us look good without actually doing the changing of the processes so that they're equitable for their students, so that we're not actually doing the work. And I know that we're all committed to doing that here. I'm simply expressing what was expressed to me. So put that out there for whatever it's worth. But thanks for bringing up the distinction between mastery and master as a noun.
One other comment, if I could, we have a document called an Educational Master Plan that was adopted in 2015 for a 10-year period. And so what we have been talking about is an update that fills in some gaps in that document, namely that there were no goals. Oops. And so, this is something that we will be revisiting in a fairly short time, just because we're going to come to the end of that planning timeframe. But that doesn't, it's not meant to sway people one way or the other in terms of the use of the word, but just to put this in some context that this process that we have gone through has not been a full-blown revision. We had a strategic planning process, we had a facilities planning process. We're going to update this document and tie those things in and update some of the data in it. And that's really all we're doing at this point in time.
Awesome. I see the two.
May I amend the motion?
We're still in discussion. So you will have an opportunity to do so, but can we get the other thoughts?
I'll just follow the parliamentary procedure.
Just two quick questions. One is, Susan, thank you for bringing this up. I would offer that we do not exist in a vacuum, so that means we have a chance to actually respond to something, but we also might be part of a larger momentum to change that terminology. So when you and your fellow institutional beings get together, effectiveness teams, do we have the same profile at the state level on these questions? In other words, our documents that we create, let's say master plan, educational master plan, does that propagate all the way up to the state level? And the reason why I'm asking, that's right, but in a sense, this may not be too hard of a reach if it seems that this is happening throughout the state.
I actually tried to do some research to discover the origin of why the term master plan seems to be so prevalent in California when it was not in other state community college systems that I'm familiar with. And I, tried to trace back whether there was some language in Ed Code or something in an earlier version of the accreditation standards that might have been the source. And I haven't found a clear, but I think searching, it is still in use at a lot of California colleges, but not as much at least in other Western states. That's what I'm familiar with.
Just real quick, second question on that. Maybe it's not that important. If the question that's being presented to us is to replace it with what? So,
Well, and I don't know that it's a what, and to Susan's point, somewhat being unique to California, is it even necessary to have the term or word master in our educational plan? Couldn't it just be our educational plan, which is what many colleges outside of the state do, if that makes any sense? And I see Sean, I believe Sean had his.
No, it's just a gesture.
Well, this gives me an opportunity to try to lighten up the discussion, which is a very real discussion. What will we do with one of my favorite rap groups, Eric B. and Rakim has a song, I'm working on a master plan, but this is new to me. I think to Suna's point, I wouldn't want to do something that isn't backed by substance in terms of actually undoing bureaucracies that negatively impact students. And so that, it's kind of refreshing for me to hear someone else say that, because at first I kind of was taken back by this, I have to say. But at the end of the day, for me, the document and what's in the document, and the name does have meaning. We know that, but you had a friendly amendment that you wanted.
Yeah, so because I believe personally and professionally believe in the importance of discursive process, so I think what I would like to amend or fix my original motion is to create a discussion space prior to the next round of this, so that we're not dismissing the people's concern about the use of language, but yet we can meet all the requirements, the board requirements and all these timelines, but we would commit to, so the motion is I move to commit to create a space for discussion on possible name change. So that way we can create the discursive space.
And I appreciate that, Masa, as a way of process. Would somebody like to second or second Masa's friendly amendment? Because there's another option. I'm reading a book, the third option. We could just drop the master out of this and we could have a facilities plan and we could have an education plan and we could all go on with our lives.
But the timing was an issue, right?
No, if we can vote right now to remove the word master out of both. And as you heard from Susan, and I did the research too when this came up, many folks, and it was a surprise to me, but I've only lived and worked in California, that outside of California, folks have a facilities plan and they have an educational plan. And actually, after hearing that, very similar to kind of Suna's suggestions with getting the ED off of committed, it actually sounds fine to me to say an educational plan and a facilities plan. Is the word master even necessary in that?
And I don't think nobody will fight. No.
I told you the things that I don't think.
The word has to be
So to be in order, I guess I would
Offer a second friendly amendment?
I would withdraw my original amendment because first amendment was not seconded, so I will withdraw my original motion, but I would like to be recognized
Yes.
to
The chair formally recognizes the senator from administration.
So, Ricky, I would like to move then that this group consider the removal of the term of the word master from both facility and educational plan.
Ricky, this is Rob Buell, I'll second that.
All in favor indicate by raising your hand. Anyone, motion carries. Thank you.
That was
The only controversial thing, Ricky, was your favorite rap group. So
Oh,
let's be
sorry.
clear.
That's the first thing that popped in my head. Interesting. Folks, I can already say at least, and I'll say this, I've enjoyed having this meeting in person far more than I did in Zoom. So it's good to see you all. I always appreciate a lively discussion. It makes us all better. It certainly makes me a better leader, and I get to go look for the breadcrumbs in the areas that do need attention. Because we want to be as close to perfect as possible. We want to make sure we're meeting our students' needs, which means we need to meet the needs of those who support our students. Number 9 are just updates in terms of dates. Are there any other announcements in Tilly, and then we'll go to Masa?
And I'm actually gonna refer a little bit to Susan too, but I thought for the next time we meet on 9/27, we're planning a retreat, and I didn't see it on here, I just wanted to.
Yeah, so I thank you for bringing that up to me, and Janelli, bless her heart, does an amazing job, and sometimes I have a senior moment, but that is a great opportunity for a reminder that our next meeting, which is on the 27th, is a planning meeting for this council to develop 3 to 5 goals. Susan will send out some pre-work. She's agreed to lead the effort, and we want to be able to have an evaluation of this group. And you should feel like this is a council, that you can bring up your concerns and your ideas, and that we as a group follow up on them. And so that is how we will spend the next meeting. So there will only be one agenda item on the meeting on the 27th, and that will be for us to develop some goals as a council. Thank you for that, Tilly. Awesome.
Question
Yes.
following up on that, is that just 2:30 to 4, or is it going to be longer?
The same time.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, same time.
Oh, thank you. The history and political science department is providing a learning opportunity to be compliant with the federally required Constitution Day coming up. Professor Boucher is organizing the annual 28th Amendment project, which is to have students imagine what will be and what should be the 28th Amendment to the Constitution. So please encourage students to participate.
Is there a flyer or anything for?
He should be, yes.
It's already in the.
He's, yeah, okay, good. Thank you.
In line with that, in that same week, September 20th is National Voter Registration Day. So working with Student Affairs and the San Diego League of Women Voters, we will have a table out on Plaza here. And there will be something in your inbox in the next couple of days that you can share with students. When is that? September 20th. It'll be roughly 10 a.m. to 1 p.m.
I have a question on that. As I understand it, as faculty, we can't actually get students to vote, have students register to vote during class, but we can outside the classroom. I seem to recall that from union meetings or something.
You can't, I believe that you cannot give students extra credit for voting or to register.
Okay, thank you. That's
Because
what it
that
is.
start touching the federal national law, I believe.
Okay, thank you. So I can still pass out voter registration cards. I simply can't offer extra credit. Perfect. Thank you for that clarification.
Any other announcements?
Just quick question, the C, Hugo, is that the Hugo conference or what's the name, November 10th?
Yeah.
Yes.
Hugo conference?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll make that correction for the next meeting. And any other updates? I have an update. Want to publicly thank Ira for helping with all the logistics on the Ghana trip. If everything works out, I need everyone to cross their fingers and their toes because we have not received our visas back and we're supposed to leave on Thursday. And it has been a challenge and a learning experience for all of us, but we're in contact with the embassy and hope that we can take our party of 13 people to include 6 students. Unfortunately, 2 of the students dropped out, and we continue to work to try to get to Ghana. There is a group of approaching 300 community college folks who are going to Cape Coast University, one of the largest universities in Ghana, on a conference to talk about student success, also to talk about study abroad. We know a lot of our Black students do not participate in study abroad, so we have an opportunity to talk about a global exchange of education. And again, want to just publicly thank Ira for all of her hard work in trying to get us there. We are going to be down to the wire to try to get folks on that flight that leaves on Friday. If I am not here on Monday, that means we made it. And that will mean that Marciano will be the acting president next week, because I am likely to have spotty internet access, and so Marciano will be the acting president on my behalf. Other than that, it is so good to see you all. Appreciate the lively discussion. We'll do it again, same time, same place in about 2 weeks, so everyone take care. And I'm gonna run off.